We are getting ready. We've got two people presenting from their reflections on the Nativity of the Christ poem. I know it was Elizabeth and Julia, I think?
No, I think it's Delilah.
Delilah. You want to start?
Yeah, sure.
All right. Come on up. What?
Oh, no, I should go here.
Do you have something to show up there?
No, it's just a paper.
Oh, come on over here so that they can hear you online better. All right, all eyes on Delilah, please.
Okay, so I just did a little thing that's like a comic strip. It's the quote that I chose is "The bird that built the nest is hatched therein." So this is like, I was gonna do like God, but there's no real depiction of God, so it's just kind of Jesus like building the nest, right? And then also created earth, and then Jesus was born on earth. Like the progression.
Cool.
So
That's really cool.
Awesome. All right, Alicia, bye.
Haha, wrong for once.
Okay, so mine is the word is dumb, the mirth of heaven doth weep. So, the whole concept of the word is dumb is taken from, of course, the Nativity, because Jesus, of course, cannot speak as he is, a baby. But it can also be reinterpreted as the moment when Jesus gives up his spirit to God. So in that moment, in his death, the word, Jesus, is dumb. And then the mirth of heaven is represented by the sunny sky up above, and then doth weep is represented by the cross surrounded by a raining sky, but the tears of heaven are golden because it is joy.
And that's so everyone online can get a look at it. All right. So, we have several of you still are going to come up and either do or redo your hero bits. I'll make sure you're going to be seen on screen. Okay. So you come on up here. So we've got at least 3 of you that are coming up to do that. Who would like to go first?
Julia.
She's hiding really well. Audie's got his hand up though, so I like volunteers. Audie, come on up.
Stand over there so I can
Actually, we'll get rid of that so it's not distracting for everyone.
So, my character was Obi-Wan from Star Wars. He's the negotiator. He doesn't just rush into things and has a plan, and then if he ends up getting caught and stuff, he tries to talk his way out of it most of the time. He cares for others. You can see that with, I don't know if you've watched the Clone Wars series, but with the Mandalorians, he helped them. And then in Revenge of the Sith, he helped Padme after Anakin basically killed her. And he's brave. He's fought in many battles and has been taken prisoner, I believe, several times and survived all of them. And of course, he has the high ground. You can always win if you have that. So,
All right, thank you. My favorite characters from the series as well. All right. Anthony or Julia, which of you's going?
Julia.
No. Let's do it. No.
Peer pressure.
There's a camera. Okay, hello.
Do
it. No. Do it. No. It's just the one that's watching online. I'm.
Oh, we're done.
Okay. So the character I'm doing is on Annabeth Chase. Just to clarify, if you think I am talking about the movie one, I will get somebody to flop on top of you because the movie one, it's horrible, Anthony. Okay, they just like totally wrote her character wrong, and like they just, you know, the whole movie is just horrible and just chopped up and disgusting. So I'm doing the one from the books because that's the I guess I should say original. Even though they're technically both the same character, the movie one is just absolute garbage. So I like Annabeth Chase because she, of course, is like wise because of her mother, and she is a daughter of Athena. But like also, I see that like she is very caring and like she always has a plan. But because like she always has like different battle tactics, but like also she's very caring, making sure her friends are always okay, and like she always loves going on adventures, and she's very outgoing, and she's escaped many death-threatening experiences, which kind of shocks me. But you know, it's a story, so they can't just kill off a good character like that. But I just really like her because she just really cares for her friends and is like very outgoing. I mean, she doesn't like care too much about her friends where she'd like kill herself to save her friends. But I mean, like maybe if she'd be put in that type of situation, she would. But like other than that, she's just like a great character overall, and yeah. Thank you.
All right. All right. Anthony, can you tell us more about Maverick this week?
Do I have to?
Yes. We need more than the need for speed.
Because I didn't feel like it.
I didn't even know what this character was.
I don't feel like showing.
All right.
All right. I'm gonna try and put it so that the camera can see also.
Do you have an HDMI output?
No, MacBooks suck that way.
Okay.
So, part 2, why Maverick? Well, you know, all the stuff that I said the first time, I was lazy, so I didn't remove this. But I thought it was cool that, you know, he got to wield a 40,000-pound machine for deer seamlessly at almost Mach 2. A couple more things that I go in depth about. It taught me a few lessons through the movie. No matter how good you are, stuff always happens. You can't prevent it. Another thing is, don't let your past control your future. Only let it be a lesson. I mean, you saw it. I don't know how many of you saw the movie, but spoiler alert: when the goose breaks his neck and he's no longer there, he's sad and he doesn't fly right for a while, and till Iceman kind of says sorry, because, you know, kind of his fault. Jet wash and stuff. That's how planes work. The strong will have their weaknesses exposed. The stronger will overcome them. From the movies, he goes past Iceman's death, you know, how the goose breaks his neck. Or not Iceman's death, it was Goose. Yeah, he got his neck snapped by the canopy. Which is kind of poetic, thinking that, you know, geese are killed by having their neck snapped too. And knowing you're good at something versus boasting it off, two different things. Because you can be good, but if you go around telling everybody you're good or better than everybody else, that can lead to bad stuff. Like Pastor Brett said last time, many argue that Iceman was the better pilot. I say not, because Iceman was considered desirable because he would follow orders, not necessarily do what was right in the heat of the moment. And that's what made Maverick so special, was he could make those split-second decisions that, you know, his wingman's getting overtaken. Why not fly inverted and give him the birdie? So any counter arguments? Yeah.
I know nothing
picture.
about the Air Force.
He's a bozo and he doesn't know how to fly a plane.
Just the man with all the knives in the world. All right.
Anthony,
Yes?
how do you know how it feels saying that the Percy Jackson movies are good?
Oh, not just to make people mad.
I think that was also Jetson's goal.
I've never watched it. So. All right. Mrs. Jenkins.
Yay! All right. Okay, you did not tell me this about like a minute ago, so I have nothing prepared. But I would have to go with my. Believe it, you'll find out just how nerdy I've always been. Ever since I was about like junior high, 8th or 9th grade, probably my favorite hero has been. Get this, Sir Percy Blakeney from the Scarlet Pimpernel. I love the book and I love the movie when I was growing up, and just explain who he is. And I've just loved this character forever. Sir Percy Blakeney is the Scarlet Pimpernel during the during the French Revolution. It's a fictional character. He basically rescued some of the aristocrats who were going to be beheaded by the guillotine. But he would always do it in disguise. And so he always found these really creative disguises to go in and rescue the people out of France. And what I always admired about his character, what I loved about his character, is that, first of all, he was so creative in the things he would do. And he's a baronet in England, so he's as an Englishman coming over. He's caring about people who he has no reason to. He could live a completely wonderful life in England and have nothing to do with people down there, but he constantly was putting himself at risk to go down and rescue people out of France. And and then he's creative in how he does it, and then also the fact that in order to make sure that the disguise is complete, he's a true mastermind. He knows, he thinks of these unbelievably creative ways to get people out of France. But at the same time, in order to make sure people never suspect that he's the one doing it, he and his band of people who are doing these those rescue missions, he comes across as an absolute idiot. So this complete fop that everybody makes fun of. So he endures contempt and ridicule. People will just mock him all the time for being such a airhead and not being able to do anything. And yet at the same time, as he listens to all of that, he takes all that, at the same time he's constantly trying to think of other people in need and how he can help them. And I say, I've had a thing, I've loved him since I was in 9th grade, probably actually 7th grade if I'm honest. So that's my guy. Thanks for putting me on the spot.
How could we argue with Sir Percy Blakeney?
You can't argue with Sir Percy.
He is
For the
perfect.
best. If you guys ever want to watch the Scarlet Pimpernel, party at my house.
It's amazing. It's fantastic. And there's also a great fencing scene, which is just very entertaining. You should be great. She showed us the first time.
What happens
Was that the Scarlet Pimpernel?
Yeah.
There's a poem he writes about himself. He says, when he always goes around, so he does this really foppish character. They seek him here, they seek him there. Those Frenchies seek him everywhere. Is he in heaven or is he in hell? That damn Lucy. But yeah.
Oh yeah.
Anyone who's watched Crazy for
Yeah. I still love it.
All right. Does everybody get their sheets for today?
Yeah.
Okay. What's that? Okay.
Is it in the cabinet or something? I didn't see it.
Maybe so.
No.
Before we jump in, I want to center in on something Julia was saying about how bad the Percy Jackson movies are compared to the books. There's almost nothing that Hollywood can't ruin, because Hollywood has a very narrow bandwidth. It's almost impossible to do the character. In fact, it's impossible to do the character development in an hour and a half that you can do in even a short novel. The first Harry Potter book took how long to read? 5-6 hours? How can you do the same amount of character development in an hour and a half on screen? There's also things that screen doesn't communicate well. So they're forced to change the stories to do what the medium can do. That's why watching movies is never going to be a substitute for reading books. It can get you interested in a new subject, but until you read the book, you're not going to get the inner life of the characters and see things to the point. And for those of you who love the Lord of the Rings movies, they miss, because Peter Jackson loves action movies, he misses the most important character in the books. The most important character in the books in terms of character development is Samwise. And he's an okay character in the movies. He's by far the most interesting character in the books because he goes from being basically an illiterate farmer to being a philosopher king at the end. You see his development across the 3 books. So he's an amazing character that way. So that would just want to throw that in for all of you. Take some time to take one of your favorite movies and go read the book that preceded it, and you'll see the characters develop in a radically different way. Even if it was from a graphic novel, it's going to be really different. So let's talk about some of what you guys identified as your favorite characters and their traits. Thinking about your own character and who you highlighted for us over these 2 weeks, what are some of the traits that really make you feel drawn to a character? Say more. Particulars of personality. Give me some particulars about, like, what kind of personality do you find attractive?
With your comedy.
Okay, you like a little comedy?
Humbleness.
Okay.
Creativeness.
Great. Okay, yep. It was interesting, before we go on from creativity, it was interesting to hear all the different ways you guys came up with creativity. We had some, mostly it was like puzzle solving. I don't know the Percy Jackson stories very well. I know Elizabeth talks to me about this, so I know about this.
He refuses to read the books because he doesn't like what they're writing. So.
Yeah. But regardless, I also don't have time. I've got like a stack of 100 books I'm not going to got
family reading at night. You have time.
We just haven't gotten to that one yet. But Annabeth is we talked about, like how she's creative in battle, right? The group that did Sword Art Online said the same thing about Kirito. Some of you have expressed it in other books and stuff like that. Okay, so creativity was a big one. Carrie, what else?
Bravery.
Bravery, okay.
Strength.
Speed.
I won't argue the character can fly a Mach 7,
I
so
love fast.
yeah.
What?
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah, we had the need for speed, and we had Quicksilver. I guess we got to acknowledge that. Speed is a big thing. Intelligence. What else?
Bringing out the better side in others.
Okay.
Self-sacrificing. Vulnerability.
Perseverance.
All right. Self-sacrifice. I'm trying to keep up. Give me a second. Self-sacrificing. What was the other one I heard of that?
Vulnerability.
Vulnerability. Say more about vulnerability. What do you mean by that?
Like emotionally vulnerable. Like he's willing to put himself out there to help others.
Okay.
Human, like you can relate to it.
Oh yeah.
It's not just some like with going with vulnerability, like kind of like you can see a human side of it. He's not like immune to everything.
Yeah, character who's actually like showed to be like a real person, so you can connect with them and who's true.
Yeah. Why is Superman so much harder to write as an interesting character than nearly anyone else in the Marvel universe? Because he's too powerful. He's too far away. Yeah.
Superman's not wanted.
Huh?
Superman's not wanted.
As I said, unlike any of the Marvel characters, yeah.
We thought you said anybody else in the Marvel universe. And
No, just anyone in the Marvel universe, not anyone else. Yeah, I know. Yeah. He's harder to rate as an interesting character because it's hard to stop him. They had to invent a weakness for him, the kryptonite, right? Yeah. What else? What else makes your think about the character you like?
Perseverance. Perseverance.
Perseverance. Okay. Down here.
Integrity.
Sorry, what?
Protective.
Protective?
Loving.
Loyal.
That's all right. It's okay.
Loyalty.
Okay.
Trustworthy.
What else? Anything else?
Trusting.
Okay.
Faithful. In the emotional sense, not spiritual sense.
Smart.
I hear you. Smart. Yeah, we heard that quite a few times, didn't we?
Passionate.
Adventurous.
Adventurous. Well, that's an interesting one.
Curious.
Before we go, we can go on beyond that. Before we go on to if there's anything else you guys want to add, what about adventurous is attractive as a personality trait? Like,
And is up for an adventure anytime, and ready to go.
sort of an embracing life kind of thing, right? Okay, cool. And any other important ones we've missed?
The willingness to like develop as a person even in acknowledging their own flaws.
Can I just say willingness to grow? Is that fair?
That's fair.
Okay. Okay. So here, now I want you to think of an anti-hero you feel sympathetic with. You guys know what an anti-hero is? Or a villain? You know what a villain is. Pick a villain or an anti-hero. Someone who you can't ultimately condone where they go, but you can feel sympathy with. And just throw a couple names out for me. Deadpool. Percy. Luke from Percy Jackson, okay. What else? Joker. Megamind. Megamind's an anti-hero. He's not a villain, he's an anti-hero. Yeah. Shigaraki. Yep.
Yeah, I don't know if you heard about Aki Kakaiba from Sword Art Online.
Mm-hmm.
Voldemort.
Now, do you feel empathy with Voldemort?
In a weird
Say,
way.
no, yeah, say how. Say how.
Well, like, he had, like, a really tough childhood growing up, and probably that's why he turned, like, evil, because, like, his parents never cared for him, they treated him really bad, and he just was trying to cope with his pain from his childhood, but he thought that the best way to deal with it was to inflict pain on others.
Okay. Well, or he thought inflicting pain on others was an okay price to pay to move further along the path he wanted to go, right?
It feels kind of like a general disregard for everybody else. Kimiko Toga from My Hero Academia.
Which one is that?
Blood Girl.
Oh.
I've been reading the recent chapters, right?
Think. Okay, now we've got a bunch of characters thrown out there. Pick one that you especially feel a sense of empathy for, and look at this list and see if they don't demonstrate some of those traits.
I mean, just to think about it, there's one person who I think that has 90% of that. It's just a single father trying to help world hunger using his stone collection.
Wait,
Thanos.
A reference I clearly do not know.
We do know.
Thanos, father.
Oh, Thanos. Yeah, I got it.
Father
Okay.
trying to help world hunger with his stone collection.
Okay, got it. Got it.
Oh,
Okay.
wow.
Yeah, but why? Again, in a sense, I mean, they play with whether Thanos is a villain or an anti-hero, okay? Because what he is, I mean, he's an environmental terrorist, okay? There's a whole division of the FBI committed to environmental terrorism. There are people trying to find a way to develop a virus very similar to the COVID virus, but that will only kill human beings, because we are a cancer on the face of the earth. That's their perspective.
Another anti-hero thing, the Medusa from Doctor Stone.
Okay, yeah, there you go. But what makes Thanos, look at this list here. Obviously Thanos is intelligent, he's self-sacrificing. Oh, he seems, one thing no one put up here, but I think is implicit in most of your characters. Go ahead. You mean another?
Not traits, and I have another person.
Okay. One of the things I think that we often serves a purpose higher than themselves, right?
One that I forgot was resourceful. That's just, it's an important one for a lot of our characters, I think.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Devoted is also another.
What's that?
Devoted.
Devoted? Mm-hmm. Devoted, committed, yeah. I tend to think of devotion is oriented towards a person, towards people, and committed is towards a cause. With all these, one of the big distinguishing factors between a villain and an anti-hero is this one. An anti-hero typically serves a purpose higher than themselves, even if it's misguided, even if their way of pursuing it is misguided. Voldemort, in the end, becomes very hard to feel any sympathy for, and one of the reasons why they filmed him the way they did, and the reason why she portrayed him as a snake, is that being snake-like, is he doesn't serve any purpose higher than himself. In the end, everyone gets sacrificed to him. He's not trying to bring an end to world hunger, even if the way is ultimately misguided, right?
I mean, you could technically count Sword Online as a social experiment, so you could count that for Octopus.
In a way, yeah. I mean, he's certainly trying to figure out what makes human beings tick, right? When he creates the lethal game.
I think what's always interesting with a lot of these things is that it's debatable whether they fill a category or not.
Right.
It's depending on how you're viewing the way the characters are portrayed. Like, Himiko's Toga could be said to be a certain purpose higher than herself, because her goal is to basically create a world where everyone can freely express themselves as they truly are. But this is because she has a very particular reason why she wants to do that.
Sure. And again, she is serving a higher purpose, even if it is partially self-serving. But that's what makes her character somewhat sympathetic, right?
Yeah, she's a fascinating character, very conflicted.
There you go.
And Thanos really didn't kill once he had his stone flesh. He just, wiped out half of it, so that, if the other half decides they want to all die, he can just bring out the other half. Backup.
It's an interesting perspective. You have to show the film theory on that one, Ian. The film theory on Thanos.
Oh yeah.
All right. So as you look at these characteristics, one of the things we've been talking about in this class is who Jesus is. And if Jesus is humanity, as humanity was meant to be, just as we are, as the book of Hebrews says, yet without sin, okay? These things up here are going to be characteristics you're going to see in Jesus, because they're the things that attract you to another person. And I don't mean sexual attraction, I just mean attracted them as a personality. What attracts you to someone? Comedy is one. I was so glad you yelled out comedy at first, because honestly, Jesus is hysterical in the Gospels if you know the context. When the Pharisees try to catch him out on things, and he kind of lays a verbal trap for them, and then they step in it, and they're standing in front of all their admirers, and we don't know how to answer now. Way more presence of mind than I could imagine having on the spot like that. Where he just kind of you can almost hear Jesus laughing. It's one of my favorite pictures. Someone painted a picture of Jesus laughing, which is hysterical. I just, not in the sense that it's funny, it just shows that side of his personality, which is everywhere implicit in the Gospels, but you never actually see him laugh.
It's really related to the chosen, actually. Was that St. Benedict portrayed that?
Yeah, exactly. And you see that real human side of Jesus, yeah. So get to know Jesus by reading your Bible. Get just familiar with, and I hate to say read between the lines, because ancient literature didn't write like modern literature. Modern literature, everything changed when radio and television were invented. If you read a novel written before the invention of radio, it's 80% description and only 20% dialogue. That flip-flops when radio is invented. And even when you have in a book, in a modern book, a lot of what you're going to have written is internal dialogue. What's going on, what in the person's mind, what they're thinking. So it's all this kind of stuff. This ancient stuff focused on description, and you were meant to imply what was going on in the people's minds as they described what was going on in the situation. So get to know the person of Jesus, because everything that attracts you to another person is some way like him, and that's not surprising. Because Genesis 1, how are human beings made? In the image of God, right? Genesis 3, what happens? The fall into sin. And the fall into sin doesn't mean people become all 100% bad. That would be easy to figure out. It's easy to choose between good and evil, if you can see the truth clearly. What becomes difficult is when good looks like evil or evil masquerades as good. Right? It's when human beings are a mixed bag that things get difficult. If you read the book of Proverbs, I strongly encourage, if you've never read your Bible before, the two places to start are the Gospel of Luke, because it reads most like a modern book, and the book of Proverbs, starting at chapter 10. Because all it is a collection of wise sayings, and human nature has not changed in 4,000 years. I was reading chapter 10 this morning as part of my morning devotions, and twice or three times it says, an evil mouth hides lies. So when an evil person speaks, hides violence, excuse me. When an evil person speaks, they're using their words to disguise violence that they're perpetrating somewhere else. Whether it's violence of actually like hurting somebody physically, or whether it's violence of assassinating their character, making them feel unwelcome in a social situation, pushing them out to the side. Whatever it is, that's something that they're doing. They're hiding with their words. They want to look good and not be good. And that's integrity, right? That's why we admire someone who is who they say they are. The person who is who they are. I loved the late Colin Powell, just passed away a couple weeks ago. He was a really important member of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. He said, integrity is who you are when no one else is looking. Who are you when no one knows what you're up to? Okay? And evil can only be attractive to us when it imitates one of these things or does it partially. A friend of mine, actually, I'm going to bring a picture in a moment. A colleague of mine, the North American Lutheran Church's director of missions, is an exorcist. Died in the wool, and he's done it for 30 years. He's one of the best trained exorcists in North America. He's also an artist. He's also a graphic artist, painter and drawer, illustrator. When I did a 48-hour training with him, the thing he wanted to emphasize to us is he said, it's not like in the movies. 99% of what he's ever been called out to look at is a psychological problem. But he said the 1% that's not a psychological problem, that's real evil and manifesting in a person's life, it's not like in the movies. Because in the movies, to make the villain sympathetic, there's always a little good mixed in. That's not how it's like when you're facing a demon. the demon wants to kill you and chew on your bones forever. There's no good left. That's what an evil angel is like. And that was the one thing he tried to emphasize to us over and over and over again. Don't expect anything like this anywhere in a fight with a demon. But that's also why St. Paul could say our fight, meaning as Christians, is not with flesh and blood, not with other people. It's with powers and principalities. Even the person who is most oppressing and hurting and you and people you love is doing it under the influence of evil that's beyond them. The only reason they think they're doing it for one of these reasons. They think they're a good person. And in some fatal way, they've taken one of these things and counterfeited it. And that's twisting them. We call that original sin. All of us are a mixed bag, which is why we should all have sympathy for each other when we fail one another. And it's why the hallmark of the Christian faith is forgiveness. It's the peace that's the absolute non-negotiable at the heart of the faith is forgiveness. Not just God's forgiveness of us, but then our forgiveness of one another. And this is what, it's the twisting of one of these things, the misdirecting of it, aiming it at the wrong target, that gives evil the ability to operate in the world. One of the great insights, see, J.R.R. Tolkien especially caught this. You guys, are you all familiar with The Lord of the Rings? Or is that like a generational thing for my generation? Okay, most of you know. What are the orcs? What are the orcs?
Corrupted elves.
Corrupted elves. Yeah. Only God can create. Evil can only twist. So, and this is what the evil powers do. They take something already existing that God made to be good and twist it up. And that's what's happening to us as we go through life and encounter sin. We participate in sin by manifesting it and bringing out it in our lives, and then we get hurt by it when other people sin. So we've been talking about who Jesus is as like the person we would look to as the way a human being should live. And that's why the book of Hebrews begins by calling him the pioneer and perfecter of our faith. He's us as we should be. So these are the good traits. We're going to spend a couple of weeks, or at least we're going to be dipping our toes as we go through the rest of this year in the other side of things, which is sin. The twisting, breaking of what we are. This is something you want to put down. Yeah, they may have. Email it to the group. Or text it rather to the group, yeah. Okay. Part of the reason why these anti-heroes and villains need to have a good trait for you to feel sympathy with them is because you are made in God's image. The way St. Augustine said it, or Augustine of Hippo said it, was that there's a God-shaped hole in our hearts. There's an absence in our lives that's shaped like God, and we're always trying to fill it. In everything we do, not just chasing after God, but chasing after our idols, chasing after the things we think will fulfill us, like fame or love or accomplishment. All those things are but a reflection, an aspect of God and His goodness. And when we try to fill the hole with the wrong thing, that we end up feeling incomplete and hungering for more. Most of us make the mistake of trying to chase after more of the same thing that kept us and left us hungry in the first place, instead of the one thing that can fulfill us. we're going to end the year. I'm going to tell you the story of a very famous young woman who appeared on the cover of, I want to say Time magazine. But for now, we're going to talk about, just for a minute, about sin. What is sin? Okay. What else? Yep, that's good. This is good. We're going to make it kind of an act of evil. Okay. Corruption of good. Act of evil.
Wound on the soul.
Act of evil. Wound on the soul. Chaotic. Interesting. Yeah, it's interesting that what's the first act of God in the book of Genesis? First act of God in Scripture.
Ordering everything.
Yeah. The Spirit of God moved over the face of the waters, meaning over the ocean. Now imagine you're desert dwellers, and you can't swim by definition. There is nothing scarier than the ocean. The ocean represents chaos to you, like it did to the ancient Israelites. Were one of the few ancient civilizations that had no navy. They had no wartime ships. Water represents chaos. God steps in there and goes, light from dark, day from night, sun, moon, land over here, water over here. He's creating order out of the chaos. Yeah, so chaos in a way is kind of the opposite. What else? Just your ideas. Not a quiz. Can't get it wrong.
Betrayal.
Okay, betrayal. Yeah, you guys just got done reading Paradise Lost a couple weeks ago. What makes Satan Satan? I want to be king, not you. Yeah. What else? A blight. Okay. Yeah. There's a very good reason why evil is often portrayed as pestilence. Portrayed in art and in various forms. And in the book of Revelation too, right? Death comes riding a pale horse. Pale literally means green. Like it's rotting. Blight. There's pestilence. Pestilence. War rides on a red horse. I forget what we call it, the horses are. It's on one. Anyway. The word we translate as sin from the New Testament is hamartia. That's an archery term. It means to miss the mark. It means one of those good things we just had up on that long sheet was aimed at something and it missed. That's sin. It's also why in the Old Testament it's also referred to as uncleanness. Missing the mark. Fatally flawed. Cracked pots, as St. Paul said. You can't hold the water. It leaks out, slowly or quickly, depending on how badly damaged you are.
It's corruption.
Yeah, that's it. Right there. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, one of the things that makes human beings, and lots of people, you guys got this in Hobbes today. Have you guys done your discussion on Hobbes yet? Right? What does Hobbes think is at the center of our problems as humanity? Why does Leviathan need to exist to mediate between us? What do we all fall prey to? Fear of what? Fear of death? Fear of death, fear of chaos. right? We're tragic. This is why you guys have seen the old thing for drama where you have the comedy face and the tragic and the sad face, right? Tragedy is one of the differences. You guys have done enough Shakespeare or other things. What happens at the end of a Shakespeare tragedy?
A character who was initially good and had a good station in life, through some tragic flaw within their character, falls from grace, basically.
Or if they retain their nobility, like in Romeo and Juliet, what are they? Dead. Okay? In a tragedy, if you retain your goodness, you die. The only way to live is to cooperate with or compromise with evil. What happens in a comedy? Who's dead at the end of a comedy? Not typically anyone, actually. In Shakespeare, even the comedian, even the bad guys end up riding off into the sunset. They're kind of pushed to the side. But who is left with any dignity? Nobody! I love my favorite comedy by Shakespeare. It will always be Beatrice and Benedict, Much Ado About Nothing. It's my favorite one. But both Beatrice and Benedict are revealed to be idiots in the last scene. They're both complete nincompoops. As they pull out the love poetry they awkwardly wrote for each other when they were protesting that they hated each other. And everyone's like, nope, here they are. They wrote a poem. We're going to talk about whether the Christian story is a comic one or a tragic one. But what I want you for now to focus on is that human beings are tragic. One thing that everyone who survived the concentration camps during World War II said, everyone said, the best people died in the camp. If we made it out, we weren't one of the best people. The best people gave their bread to the person who needed it and died themselves. They stepped forward to go to the gas chamber so that someone else over here didn't have to. We as human beings are tragically flawed. We have, and I'm trying to remember who said this. It's not Hobbes. It's around the same time period, one of the other philosophers, where he said, the problem with human beings is we have eternity in our hearts, but not the ability to get there. This is part of what drives the plot in every story you guys love. And we're going to, right now, I'm asking you to pull out your sheets. Make sure you write down hamartia and missing the mark. You're going to need that. We talk about sin. We are made in God's image, and so we have a hunger for the one true story. Because the story of the gospel is the shape of the universe. It's the shape of human life within this universe, whether we acknowledge it or not. I want you to look at the first quote here. There's 3 Bible quotes. You can reflect on those in your own time. You're going to need them not this week, but next week. But here's what I want you to look at, this opening quote. Flannery O'Connor is one of the... If you like dark stories, read Flannery O'Connor. Very, very committed Christian. She died at age 49 of lupus. Complications from lupus. Fascinating lady. Really portrayed, and we're probably going to read at least one of her short stories, really portrayed especially the dark side of the South. The Southern culture she was part of or came from. But I want you to read, we're going to read this quote. There is something in us as storytellers and as listeners to stories that demands the redemptive act. That demands that what falls at least be offered the chance to be restored. The reader of today looks for this motion, and rightly so, but he has forgotten is the cost of it. His sense of evil is diluted or lacking altogether, so he has forgotten the price of restoration. When he reads a novel, he wants either his sense tormented or his spirits raised. He wants to be transported instantly either to mock damnation or a mock innocence. We want an emotional fix without what really is required for redemption. The redemption of a character or the redemption of the world. One of the reasons the Harry Potter books are so powerful in the end is that Harry not only has to face death but die.
That's spoiler for everybody who hasn't read it, by the way.
Oh, sorry. I assumed everyone had.
I can't read that anyways.
Sorry.
It's fine.
Okay.
No, that's wrong.
The MCU, the first, what is it, 3? Was it 3, 6? Is that how many arcs they're through now? Are they into the 4th wave now? Whatever it is. At the end of the thing with Thanos, right? What ultimately leads to Iron Man's redemption is there's only one chance out of however many million that Doctor Strange saw that the world can survive. What's the one chance? He has to die. Do you remember when he's introduced in the first Avengers movie? What's Captain America's line to him?
You, under the suit, what are you?
Yeah.
Without your suit.
Yes.
That was his response.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. He says all those things, but what Captain America comes back to him with is, you're never the guy who will lie on the wire so the other people can escape.
Oh, yeah.
You're never the one who will die so that everyone else can go home. And in the end, that's who he has to become. If you haven't seen the 30 movies yet.
If you haven't seen the movies, then what are you doing?
What does it mean in your life?
Oh, right.
Lisa?
Just go.
She's not here, so I can say this. I want you to grab your, turn it over page 1. You'll see your homework at the top. Your homework for next week, a 5 to 10 sentence reflection on those traits we took a picture of, or from your own character. If you don't know the story of Jesus really well, open up one of the 4 Gospels and learn about him. You don't have to read the whole thing, just read some of it. You'll start to get a picture of his character. Okay? And Lisa,
Yes.
how soon do you need to transition to lunch?
Whatever.
Can I start with about 10 minutes of reading?
Yeah, that's fine.
All right, so down below you're going to see a book, a short story called Calcium. This was written by a colleague and friend of mine. She is a pastor in Tokyo, and she's a wonderful writer of short stories, particularly science fiction-y fantasy short stories, is what her specialty is. So I'm going to start by reading this aloud, and I'm going to ask you guys to finish reading it at home. But you can read it in a group if you guys want to get together and then read it and discuss it, because we're going to talk more about it next week. So this, just since I'm a guy reading this, I got to tell you, it's a girl telling the story. Okay, so this is a woman telling the story. You will want to lay this at the feet of my family, or religious upbringing, or secular education, or traumatic event of youth. Some compelling defense that explains me, even if it does not quite excuse me. There's a curiosity of our new millennium that no one is truly responsible for herself, or the native wickedness that needs no particular provocation to grow. Think what you like. I will not blame anyone but myself for what I have done. Ambition sprang easily from my heart, and I have never made any effort to check it. I suppose it is the exact form that the ambition took which could be profitably explained. I came of age when it was not so common for women to be scientists, and we had to fight for our place. There's an inevitable accumulation of resentment when you have to demand what others simply receive on a basis that has little to do with merit on either side. Of necessity, I elbowed my way up and earned a PhD in organic chemistry and molecular biology. By the time I was done, I was 30 and jaded, not only by the petty competitions and degradations of clawing my way into the guild, but also by a series of unhappy and unsuccessful liaisons. I was all too willing to consider men a lost cause. Truth be told, I reckoned human beings as such a lost cause. Cynicism was my natural mode of being, not untinged with disgust. But the seductive summons to make the world a better place, the inane and unthinkable morality of our age, collided in a strange liaison of its own with my acquired habits of thinking like a chemist and an engineer. And by that means, I conceived. I conceived not a child, but something better than a child, an idea for a child, an idea for the human race. Cloning was yet in its infancy, as far as the science went, although science fiction that harbinger and catalyst of mass panic, had long since thought through all the ethical alarms. I studied the papers of the pioneers who cloned tadpoles and fish. News had just come out that Soviet scientists were able to clone a mouse. It was only a matter of time, said biologists, pundits, and doomsayers alike, before a human clone came to be. And then what? Armies of clones on the march, like in Star Wars, or communism victorious, or the human race stamped out by its evil twin. A bit silly, I think, now. Back then, people were more afraid of biological clones than AI. But I thought otherwise. Who was to say that clones would of necessity be evil or disposable replicas in the service of evil deeds? If you could clone an army of soldiers, you could equally well clone an army of saints. And if saints came to replace the human race, who could reasonably object? I hasten to remark that this was not a conviction of religion or faith. It was a well-disguised expression of despair. I did not believe in God. But those whom religion deemed saints seemed a reasonably safe bet for humanity's future all the same. Let me alert you now that I will not relate the precise details of the procedure by which I managed to do what others still have not. I'll simply grant my condescending male colleagues their point. It needed a woman's touch. Nor will I tell you exactly how I managed to acquire a fragment of bone from the reliquary. Do you guys know what a reliquary is? If you're not Roman Catholic or Orthodox, you might not. Reliquary is where they keep the bones of a saint. I was a cynic, and I operated accordingly. Just the right combination of money, wheedling, and patience did the trick. An endowed professorship at a prestigious university financed my sideline, and I may as well say that while I was good at my job, I have no illusions about the fact that my chief attraction was my tokenism. I shrug. If they give it to you, take it. The science and the acquisition of the DNA sample took quite some years. Those done, I had to arrange the circumstances of gestation and guardianship. I will tell you this much. I extracted several of my own eggs and denucleated them, bought stem cell tissue from an abortion clinic, and hired a surrogate quietly. In the 90s, surrogacy was still more scandalous than the fetal tissue trade. I paid the surrogate well to bide her time, until I succeeded in crafting a viable embryo comprised of my egg, fetal stem cells, and, as the crowning glory, the DNA of St. Francis. Yes, Francis, a man worthy of the name. Widely acclaimed to be the holiest person ever to walk this earth other than Jesus and the Buddha, neither of whom saw fit to preserve cell samples for the future. It was only natural to interpret the embryo's viability and subsequent implantation as a miracle, given the extraordinary odds against it. Countless sheep embryos perished unborn before Dolly came to term. Even conventional human in vitro embryos, the product of living donors, egg and sperm, have only a fair to middling success rate. I did not inquire too closely whether the dispenser of miracles in this case was Almighty God or Almighty Self. It is safe to say that I elided the two. If you can, you should. My ethic in life and science alike. I had no intention of raising the child myself, lacking any inclination to motherhood. At any rate, I was not such an ideologue as to deny the influence of environment and epigenetic factors. Over the 9-month wait for the new Francis to emerge, I sought and wooed a willing adoptive couple. Pious, affluent, infertile Catholics. Naturally, I led them to believe the child was gestating in my own womb, as it would have been all but impossible to explain why I had gone to all the trouble of surrogacy for a child I did not intend to keep. I simply said that to have a first child without the help of a mate at the age of 42 was beyond my capacity, and they accepted my story without challenge or question. So that's your teaser. Now you get to find out how the story ends. It's only a couple pages. Enjoy it. But it's a wonderfully written story. So you're going to enjoy reading it. But we're going to talk about it next week. So please do read it either in a group or with each other. Sorry, by yourself, in a group or by yourself.